All right, well, let's get started. I believe we have a quorum, and it is officially 8 o'clock. I want to welcome you to the MAT board meeting. We'll start off with some introductions. We'll start off from my far left. Britt, we'll start with you.
Britt Stevens, NDSU Parking.
Good morning, I'm Teresa Stolfus with M-State.
Brad Olson, West Fargo City Commissioner.
Deb White, Moorhead City Council, Ward 3.
Kevin Hansen, the MAT chair.
John Strand, Fargo City Commission.
Sarah Watson Curry with Moorhead City Council.
Jim Austin, Stover City Council.
I'm Annie Wood with MSUM.
Brian Arrett, Valley Senior Services.
Okay, well, welcome everyone. We'll turn to our agenda. First item is the March 20th meeting minutes. Hopefully you've had a chance to review those, and if so, we'd entertain a motion to accept those minutes.
I'll make a motion.
Go first.
Second.
First and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, item 2B is the procurement of fare boxes. Lori and Matthew.
The red light is on. Oh, okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
Our fare boxes were purchased in 2009 and are 10 years old, and as technology goes, that's quite old. We are having more maintenance required because of that, more road calls where the buses, the mechanics have to go out to the buses and make repairs because of jams on the fare boxes and such. We have a lot of new fare technology available now, so there are mobile ticket scanners and other features that we would like to be able to take advantage of. We have a joint system, Fargo and Moorhead, and we share our fare media and our database and our server and our hardware and software, spare fare boxes and things like that. So we have a joint procurement when it comes to the fare boxes. So Moorhead had put in for funding for this project in 2019, and we did get a grant from the state of Minnesota and have a grant into the federal government as well. So between the two, we have no local match because the state is providing the local match for the fare boxes. And so that's something that we have funded for 2019. Fargo is still looking for and has applied for some grants for that. And so our approach is to phase in the system. So, upgrading and staying with our same vendor would allow us to phase in this change. So we have had our vendor come and make presentations as to what's available. There are very few vendors that even provide fare box equipment, and GFI GenFare has been in business longest of all of them. Actually, Fargo had their fare boxes back in the 80s, and so, they've been in business a long time. So we are approaching a sole source procurement for this because of the fact that we can implement it in stages, still use our common database and our fare media that we've purchased, and so that's what we would like to do with that. So with the sole source procurement, we did have reasons for that we have to submit to the state and federal government and fill out a bunch of paperwork in order to get approval for a sole source procurement. So we are in the process of filling out that paperwork, and hopefully they'll approve that. So our recommendation today is to allow us to pursue the sole source procurement with an option to add Fargo when the funding becomes available. So we would bid it together with that option for them to take that option as soon as they have those funds available. Matt, anything you want to add?
I really don't have anything to add to that unless you guys have any questions. The one thing just to make clear is the reason that we're sole sourcing this is because if we have a mix of fare boxes on board our vehicle, our passengers only need to have one fare media type, and if we didn't do it this way, then we would have to do the entire system in one shot if we were to change that fare media. And that's what the passenger actually holds, similar to like a credit card that they tap on their fare box or that they insert into the fare box. And that's the biggest reason that we're using for the sole source, and then all the back end software and hardware.
And data collection, having to have two different systems operating, having all that data collected and try to combine it and make sure we don't make any errors and the data is correct is an important piece to that as well.
Okay, questions for Lori and Matt? Commissioner.
That said, are they competitive bids?
Yes. GenFair or SPI, whatever they go by now, GFI, they actually provided us, I believe it was 10 different agencies, costs, and then we were able to calculate what it was per fare box for those. And the reason we do it per fare box is because we need one fare box for every vehicle in our fleet. There is a safe, if you will, that we have that the fare boxes dump into. There are probes, there are all of these extra parts that connect to it. And so that cost is averaged out per fare box. But yes, to answer your question, they are competitive bids.
Matt, I see the last one lasted 10 years. Is that about the expected life expectancy? And then is the new system similar, or what would you say that is?
Generally speaking, 10 years is about what we tend to plan in for grants. It just so happens our current fare box system is actually built on a platform that's 20 years old. This setup was designed 20 years ago, so you can imagine all the technology advancements that they've had since then. And they're backwards compatible. So the new ones will work with the old ones, and the new platform is only 4 years. So we do plan for 10 years. In theory, we would probably be able, if this platform was not so old and was able to take on the things that we have planned for the next couple of years, such as mobile ticketing, improved smart cards, the RFID chip readers, then we probably wouldn't need to replace them. So it could be that they would go longer than 10 years.
Any estimate on when Fargo would be able to transition in? Is there any thoughts on that?
Yeah, Julie actually has a memo in here for a grant that she will be applying for this next fiscal year for the grant. And then, so she'll go at, she'll take a stab at that the next year or two. And then once Fargo is able to secure at least half of the fleet or more, then we would look at upgrading or finding some other funding to upgrade the remainder of the fleet.
Any other questions from the board? Yes.
Hi. I just want to confirm, I know you said it'll work with your current passes, but is that also all of the college passes, and there wouldn't be an expectation that we would need to change any of our IDs or our current data for you as well?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? If not, there is a recommended motion on the second page of Lori's and Matt's memo. Would entertain at this time.
So moved.
Is it first?
Second.
Second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, we'll move on to item 2C, the City of Fargo 2020 budget and grants. Julie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The state of North Dakota has made available $10.7 million for capital, no operating, but capital, for this not academic, I'm sorry, my apologies, I was thinking about NDSU, for their fiscal year, which starts July 1. So I am requesting to submit an application for the items that you see listed in your memo there. We're due to replace the remaining 2007 vehicle. That's a fixed route vehicle. We would like to replace 3 paratransits each year. There are actually 6 that are due to be replaced, but we'd like to stay on a cycle of 3 each year. There's a lighting upgrade to the MTG. We have the mobility manager salary in there, diesel particulate filter cleaners, some miscellaneous support equipment, which includes informational kiosks, brake lathe, and some storage for our tool room. The fare box system is listed there for Fargo. That's part of the grant I would like to submit. In the last piece is we have requests for expansion transit cutaway. We have service currently up at NDSU. It's called Tap Ride, and it's a demand response service that we replace the evening route with. And what you do is zone out the area that you're going to be covering. Students or faculty, staff, anybody in the area can utilize the software. The vehicle goes to them and takes them where they're going within that zone. So currently we're using a paratransit vehicle for that, and we would prefer to have a vehicle dedicated to that service that is more maneuverable. It'll still be accessible, but that's one of those. The other one is there's potential of getting that type of service out to the Fargo Industrial Park. So that second vehicle would be for that service. So those are the grant, that's pretty much the real quick rundown of the grant application. And I broke it out by total cost, federal share, local share. So I would be bringing this forward to the Fargo City Commission with a request for the $466,859 in local share. And I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Questions for Julie? Julie, you'd like a motion on this one, correct, on the back of your first page of your memo?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Quick question.
Sure.
Yes.
So I'm assuming then what we're applying for is the federal share?
We're applying for the federal share, yes. It's going through the state, yeah.
Gotcha, thanks.
You bet.
Yeah, I'll make the motion to approve this grant application.
I'll second it.
We have first and second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, next item, Julie.
Okay. The next item is the Fargo 2020 capital and operating budget. Yes, it is that time of year again. It comes around rather quickly. Just a couple of items to highlight. We're going to make every effort to hold the line as best we can, but one of the proposed, probably one of the biggest proposed pieces of the budget that we're bringing forward is to take the fixed route dispatchers from our contractor, First Transit, and bring them in as City of Fargo employees. And what that would do is, well, it would create the ability for us to mesh together our paratransit and our fixed route dispatchers, have one person overseeing that, and then there would be that cross-training and the ability for us to have a depth of personnel that we currently do not have. And what we would propose, and it's listed in this memo, is changing the existing lead reservationist from grade 8 up to a grade 11 and adding the 4 fixed route dispatchers at the same level that the current paratransit reservationists are. If you go to the second page of that memo, you will see bottom line, current fixed route dispatch fee, it's towards the bottom of the page, that we're paying First Transit right now would be $219,600, and bringing them in-house and assuming they all take full family benefits, it would cost $211,402. So there's a cost saving as well as we feel vast improvements with them being city employees. We're talking accountability and Matt's gonna talk a little bit about it too, but that's one of the top things that we're really wanting to bring forward this year. We've tried the last couple years to get that taken care of, but various bumps in the road, we're past that. So I think that's one part of the budget. Matt, are you gonna talk about?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up with the dispatch, bringing them into City of Fargo at that grade 6, that would currently be a slight increase on their hourly salary that they make with the contractor right now, plus the benefits. And so that would hopefully allow us to attract a higher quality candidate for those positions and provide better service to our passengers.
Yeah.
So that was all I wanted to add.
Oh, that's fine. No, you can add. One of the other things that we're hoping to see from that, adding those dispatchers into our pool, is that we would locate everyone down at the GTC, the remodel that will be going forward soon. We would have that all set up down there so that it would be a function that works completely out of the GTC. And I think actually I'm gonna have Matt talk a little bit to the software and customer-facing technologies that we're talking about.
Yeah, so the software and customer-facing technologies with the fare box, like we talked about, transit is becoming more and more technology-driven. And so our dispatchers right now are actually operating the software that has our automatic vehicle location software, showing where all of our fixed route vehicles are throughout the city. That software is connected to our customer-facing depot monitors. We are also looking at putting some touchscreen kiosks in. And what we're finding is managing that software through a contractor is it can be challenging at times. So we do provide some training for them. There are conferences for this software that we can send people to. However, excuse me. Ultimately, it is up to our contractor to ensure that the training is being done and that it's being a priority. And we have not seen that the software is a priority because they're constantly struggling with driver shortages. Now, over the past couple of months, First Transit has made huge strides in improvement in service and different things like that. So this is in no way a reflection on them or their current management. It's just a fact of the matter that when we're trying to manage a software that is so heavily dependent on where our vehicles are and engages our customers so much, having that in-house just makes sense. Even if it were to cost us more money, in this case, it actually comes out pretty even, maybe even be a slight cost savings just because of the way the pay structure and benefits work between the city and our contractor.
Just to expound a bit on the employee shortage, First Transit as the contractor, they have struggled getting drivers on board. It's not an easy thing to be a driver. It takes quite a bit of training, discipline. You have to have customer service skills. You're watching for literally everything that happens on the road like we do in a car, but you have this large vehicle you're driving. And we have some very good, top quality drivers, there's no question about it. But what has happened is because the fixed route dispatchers work for First Transit, they're often tapped to go out and drive the vehicle versus having them in dispatch where we'd like them to be the front, the face of MapBus to help customers as they come in. We feel this separation would be beneficial, and to First Transit's credit, they have come a long way in staffing up for their drivers as well. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but that's a pretty important point that I wanted to make. So basically, what we're talking about is just having that be one of the top priorities. And then you will find within the same memo, there's a listing of different accounts that aren't going to mean much to anybody sitting up there, but some of the changes that will be coming or will be requesting for budget this year. With driver services, we do have 1 year left as an option to exercise should we choose, and that would be a 2% increase. You can read through this. I'm not going to give you line by line, but overall, it's based on the line item. The one thing that we're looking at in addition to that is security services. Without a doubt, we need more security services. We upped the dollar amount last year. That has not proven to be adequate. We're running into more and more issues down there. We are working with Fargo PD to possibly fund a couple of positions for them so that they can have their officers at the GTC during all the hours we're open. That there's a lot of benefit to that. All the training goes through the Fargo PD, but then you would have a depth again of officers that could be brought in during times that those officers dedicated to us would be on vacation or out sick or whatever the case may be. It's an unfortunate thing that we have seen a large leap in the security issues, and unfortunately in the severity of the security issues. There's a whole plethora of reasons. Regardless, we need to get that under control. So if there's anything else that stands out, Matt, that we worked on the budget that you would, okay. So anyway, that's what those are just the top highlights of what we're requesting come budget. Our meeting is on May 30, so we were hoping to get this, at least you guys have a look at this and see what we're looking at doing. We're not going to do anything crazy, but I think what we're proposing is quite an improvement for our department. So happy to answer any questions, any more details that you'd like, anything along those lines.
Deb?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to go back to the issue of employee shortage, and I'm glad that you brought that up because I know that that's an ongoing issue, and I'm glad to hear that they're making some progress in that area. And I do think that in-housing would be beneficial. I just had one question in the packet when you talked about the employee shortage. And I agree that it doesn't seem like a good use of resources to have somebody, if you're short a driver one day, to bring somebody in from dispatch to run the bus routes. But how would insourcing, if we did it in-house, how would that address that? So what would happen if it was in-house and you had a day where you were short a driver, then who would cover that route? So currently they're taking somebody from dispatch and having them go out and drive. So what would happen then?
Right. Well, two-prong approach to that. The Julie Stelner, who's here with First Transit, is going to speak a little bit later. But what they have managed to do since replacing the GM that was in place for about 2 years, they've managed to go from a driver shortage of 14 down to 3. So, 21, I apologize, from 21 down.
Pretty significant. Yes.
It was significant, yes. Julie has made leaps and bounds. So that piece of it is becoming more and more in line with what it should be. And the situation where we have those folks as just Fargo employees, there would not be the opportunity to use those drivers. But the drivers are currently, they're unionized, so they have the bargaining unit, and it's a matter of them going down the seniority list in proper fashion to get the next driver. And when you're not 21 drivers short, you're 3 drivers short, it's much, much easier to fill those positions and those open shifts. So I think with everything we've been doing, that is probably going to take care of itself.
Thank you.
Brian?
Julie, I don't know if you said this. I may have heard this, maybe not, but transferring the dispatch staff from the contractor to city employees, does that affect their salary? Will they be paid a different salary?
They will. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yes, they would actually, so what I had done is I had gone in and compared where in our current contract with our contractor, with First Transit, it actually lists years of service and then what their pay rate would be. I compare that to the city of Fargo grade scale, and every dispatcher would receive a slight increase. On top of that, First Transit currently only offers pay increases for the first 5 years, and then they get longevity pay increases at like 10, 15, 20, 25. With City of Fargo, they would actually get increases for the 11 years. So it would greatly benefit those employees, not only in their hourly pay, but they would also get those step increases for several additional years.
Right.
Can you speak to what their salaries would be approximately?
Grade 6.
Yeah, it was a while ago when I did it, so it would be grade 6, and I believe with all of the dispatchers coming in, none of them would be under 16 and a half, and that's like a year 1. They do have a couple of step 1 employees right now, and then their current longest dispatcher, who's been there about 10 years, he's at the top of their pay scale. I think he comes in at like a grade 7, which is around $20. So it's not a huge increase hourly, but then there's the benefits to consider. There's, different things like that.
Thank you.
A question I had was, is there a timing as far as moving them from First Transit to the city? Is there restrictions? Does the contract have to be up, or when it could be done anytime? How does that work?
It can work in different ways, but bottom line is if we want to bring them on board, say in July, we could make that work. So it would have to go through our position evaluation committee with the city, and then it would have to be approved by, of course, City Commission and City Council in Moorhead. But we would like to get them in sooner. We were shooting technically for September, if I'm not mistaken. And so it just is a matter of timing and approvals. So realistically, September would be the soonest, but we could negotiate that easily with First Transit.
and part of the reason for September, sorry.
Yeah.
But part of the reason for September is First Transit does have a one year left on their current contract, a one option year. And so we felt that contract years are quite a bit of administrative work for us. And so if we did bring them in September 1, let's say, and that changed the dynamic of our contract, we could do all of that over this summer, and then we would just give First Transit that extension through the end of 2020, so that we wouldn't have to do 2 more agreements. We would only do 1 and just get it all taken care of with that 1. Next year, we will be required to go back out for RFP for driver services. First Transit has been at this location since the 90s, I want to say.
Yes.
Can't hear you, Matt.
90s?
98. Yeah, 98.
Yeah, 98. You know, so, but again, every 5 years, FTA does require us to go back out for the full RFP process. Historically, what we've done is a 3-year initial contract and then 2 one-year extensions.
And I know that you had on the item 2 was a Sunday service and how that could potentially impact the budget. I'm assuming with the change in North Dakota laws, there's been lots of discussion with that, but do you kind of give us an update, kind of where you're at with your thoughts on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
So Sunday service is something that we hear quite a bit. It is the #1 unmet need that we have in our service, both Fargo and Moorhead. Passengers who rely on our transit system are very adamant about getting that, and they should be. With the blue laws changing and allowing a lot of the businesses to open up earlier on Sunday, we are starting to see more and more talk about that. In our last TDP, they did do a Sunday service study for us, so we do have an idea of how we would operate that service. It would typically be hourly service. It wouldn't be the same frequency that we have during the week or on Saturday. We might look at adjusting the hours a little bit so that you know, most places are still going to close about that 6-7 o'clock time frame on a Sunday, and so we would look at those hours. The current cost for that at the last study was just under $500,000. And that would require us to add substantial FTEs. I shouldn't say substantial, but I believe, what did we figure out in the shop? 6? It was, yeah, so we would need about 6 people in the shop in order to do that. And that's all included in that $500,000 figure. But it would require about the addition of about 6 FTEs in the shop to operate that service.
And would you need then state and federal funding potentially too? Would you have to apply for that if we want to go Sunday? What would be the process with that?
Yeah, we would have to, and on the Moorhead side, Lori can speak to that, but on the Fargo side, and the $500,000 is just the Fargo cost. It does not include Moorhead. It is an estimate as well for paratransit. If we offer fixed, we have to have paratransit out there at the same time. So I'm sorry, where was I going with that? Help me out, Matt. I'm sorry, I just lost my train. Yeah, no.
So yeah, so the $500,000 is just the Fargo side. Anytime that we offer fixed route service, we are required to offer complimentary ADA paratransit service, and so that figure does include the increase in para. Both Fargo and Moorhead currently do offer paratransit service on Sunday. It is limited service. It starts at 7:15 and goes till 5 o'clock right now, and we are free to deny rides once we meet our cap. If we were to offer that Sunday service, we would no longer have the ability to deny those rides because we would be required, as we are Monday through Saturday right now, to provide those rides to passengers who need it and who qualify for that service.
Right, and back to the operating that Chairman Hansen was asking about. The operating would have to come from City of Fargo and any federal dollars or state that we would get for that. So part of our apportionment, right. We currently have an exact apportionment that comes through every year when we hit that 200,000 mark, and then the census says that we have reached that 200,000 mark, which we estimate is going to be late 2022. Then that's when we go into that transit authority status, and our funding streams would change. And that's all part of that transit authority study that we are doing on, and Michael is going to update you on that. So yeah, it would require more funding.
Okay. Yes, Deb.
I just wanted to touch on that too, because I'm glad that it's being discussed, and I understand that part of it is being precipitated by changes in North Dakota with the blue laws. But I just think, you know, as we see, we're in an area with a workforce shortage, and not having access to public transportation on Sundays really limits, for those folks that rely on it, limits the jobs that they can take. And I think that, you know, there would be a larger benefit, you know, to the community. Just having those, you know, folks that can take on those jobs would help our local industry, would help our residents to be able to, you know, expand the number of employment options that they have. And so I really hope that it's something that we continue to move ahead with.
Thank you, yes. We hope so too. It's definitely an unmet need that I think the time has come for that.
So Julie, is your thought process as far as timing on this, is something you bring back to this board for some type of recommendation in the next couple of meetings, or what are your thoughts there?
Yes, we want to go through our meetings with our internal folks, Commissioner Strand, and really lay out the numbers and what it is we'd be looking at before we come back with an actual request for recommendation for Sunday service. It's a big step. So if you're adding 6 personnel in the garage, and they're at the point right now where they're maxed, there's nothing else they can do to add hours. And looking at, it would look different on Sundays, like Matt was saying. You would have fixed route dispatchers downtown, the GTC would be open, you're increasing all your costs down there. Administrative offices would not be open, but everything else would. So we want to make sure we have the costs correct before we bring them for recommendation.
And we wouldn't need new vehicles to do that, but there would be obviously a cost of increased maintenance because we'd be putting more miles on the vehicles.
Right.
A pretty small cost in comparison to everything else, but that's kind of part of that whole picture. Item.
Right.
On page 2 of your presentation, under the position descriptions, where you're going to reclassify your operations manager, the benefits, is that just the increase of the reclassification? That's not the total package?
Yeah, so currently we have a lead. So right now, the MAT paratransit reservationists are City of Fargo employees. There are 3 of them. There are 2 reservationists and 1 lead. The proposal would include taking that lead reservationist and changing the title to an operations manager, and then putting the rest of those dispatchers underneath that position, and would be responsible for both fixed route and paratransit operations. And so that is just the increase from her current grade to the new grade and the added responsibility.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's 6,600, yeah.
Any other questions? So Julie, Matt, at this point, are you this was an update, or do you need any motions at this point?
My apologies, I don't see a motion, but that would be what we would be requesting to move this forward to our budget meetings with the City of Fargo administration.
I make that motion, please, Chairman.
If there's a first?
Okay.
First and a second, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion's carried.
Thank you.
All right, next item is 2D, which is the City of Moorhead 2020 budget and grants and capital projects. Lori.
Thank you. Last year I brought to you a 10-year financial plan, and year 2020 is, the projects listed in this memo were those that were in the 2020 element of the 10-year plan. So these are the items that we felt we needed for capital purposes. Replacement of 2 paratransit buses that have reached the end of their life. They have a 5-year, 150,000 mile life for our paratransit cutaways. We have a 1 remaining fixed route bus to replace. We did already get permission to order that bus, and it will be delivered in December of 2019. So this is just the local share funding for that out of the 2020 budget, so that as we receive it and accept it, we'll be into 2020, and those funds will be available. So that one truly has already been approved by the City Council. The other items are the miscellaneous support facilities equipment for the Metro Transit garage. This is Moorhead's share of some equipment for the garage, including the lighting improvement and the diesel exhaust particulate filter cleaner. they were in Fargo's budget as well. We also have in our 10-year financial plan replacement of shelter and shelter concrete at one of our existing shelters. We have one each year planned over the next 10 years. Many of our shelters were purchased in 1980 and 1982. They still function as shelters, but the concrete, it doesn't meet the ADA requirements for slope any longer. Those requirements have changed, and they need to be replaced. And so we're looking at doing that one per year. So that's the capital projects that were in the 2020 10-year plan. And so the local share match for that was $200,460. And then there are some other projects that we are proposing to the city manager to use that surplus MnDOT money that I talked to you guys about before, I believe. So in 2019, the state of Minnesota lowered our local share as a one-time only budget change because of their surplus. And so we have excess funds that we had allocated to transit in general property taxes that can be used for any reason. And then we have excess fare revenue that we've collected that can be used towards projects. And that can be used to match federal dollars. And we do have some federal grant money available in our apportionments at this time. So I have a meeting with the city manager next week on Tuesday to bring a full list of all of the concepts and proposals that we could use that money for. And I also need to set up a meeting with Dilworth because they have excess revenues as well from the Dilworth route. But what I'm proposing, majority of what I'm proposing has to do with the Dilworth Walmart shelter and that hub where we have several buses go, is improving it as recommended by our facility analysis that we had done last year. So doing that engineering work to design that and going out for bids to make those improvements is one of the projects listed here. And we're hoping that Dilworth will participate in that since it is located in Dilworth, and the Walmart may participate in that as well as part of that local share match. And then we have a joint project with the city engineering department that we're pursuing for updating all of their traffic signals, and that update would allow us to have green light priority where a bus can hold the light a little longer and the bus can get through and their on-time performance will improve. Their ability to keep on time is an important piece for the buses, and it's a big improvement. So the state of Minnesota has picked that project as one that they would fund with their federal pass-through dollars for $53.39. And so we would have to file an application for that in September of this year with our independent cost estimate and our memo of understanding with the engineering department and our scope of work to get a final approval, but they have selected that one as one that they would like to fund. So the recommended motion is to bring the capital budget to the Morehead City Manager for consideration, and then she would then bring that to City Council for approval.
Questions for Lori? Yes, Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question, Lori. I know that you and Paul have been talking about us acquiring some new scheduling software. Is that an appropriate thing to include in a request like this, or where does that go?
Well, it's too late for that because he already purchased it. So, and he didn't purchase it following the state and federal procurement regulations, and so that does take that out of the picture.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
John.
Thank you. Lori, I'm not sure if I should ask you or should have asked Julie and Matt this, but when we're talking new buses for fixed routes, are they green? Or are they not? Or do we go green, more green, like biodiesel buses? Or I'm just curious.
Well, Morehead is not going green with. We had a consortium procurement with other transit systems in the state, and we are buying off of that, and we are buying a diesel bus. The price for going green is a lot higher. And I know that Duluth has bought some electric buses, and they're having some issues with keeping heat in our climate, and they're working through those issues. Honestly, I think that it's too early in the procurement to look at electric buses until they've ironed out some of those issues that are happening in the colder climate like ours. But I think that basically my next bus purchase is in 2022. And so, that is an option, but the cost is more, and so it's something that we'd have to have the local share match increase. I think Fargo has a different approach to that than Moorhead, but this is my last, I've got all my fleet updated with this one that's being delivered in December. So the next one would not be until, we've got a few years yet.
Thank you.
Any questions? If not, there's a recommended motion on the bottom of Lori's memo.
I'll make a motion.
The first,
Second.
the second, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. All right, the next item, Lori.
So the state of Minnesota has a new director of Office of Transit and Alternative Transportation. She's been making a lot of changes, and I think they're really good changes. The state of Minnesota has had a transit advisory committee recommending changes, and I'm serving on that advisory committee. So it's really nice to be in the advisory capacity to the state as to the grant applications and the funding and how they affect systems like ours. Part of the recommendation that they are making, or what they are moving forward with, is a 2-year grant application instead of a 1-year grant application, and then allowing the flexibility of any unspent money in the first year to be able to be rolled into the second year of the grant. And so I think that's going to be a very positive thing for us, as sometimes fuel prices go up, times they go down. There may be a job opening for a few months where we have some money that's unspent that we can roll into the next year and use for other purposes. So that's an important piece. They've also given us guidance statewide on what can be included in increases in our grant applications for 2020 and 2021. And they are allowing for a 3.4% increase in 2020, and again, a 3.4% increase in 2021. And then on top of that, they've added $2 million for new services and enhancements and things like that are competitively can be applied for. And so Sunday service, for example, would be a competitive proposal if the city council decides to move forward with that. And I really feel Fargo-Moorhead need to do that together. The system doesn't work well when part of the system is on hours and the other part isn't, because honestly, people are traveling between the communities just like you are in your cars, and it's very difficult if you live in one community and you stop at the border and not able to get across if you work in one city and live in another. I think it should be a joint moving forward, but that will be a competitive application, and those competitive applications will come out in September. So that will be something that we will need to approach the city council and the city manager with in the budget process is, can we find the local share match to implement Sunday service on the Moorhead side. So as you listen to the Fargo budget, a lot of the Fargo budget is also Moorhead's budget because we have a joint powers agreement and because we share a lot of positions. We share, the whole the fleet and facilities manager, and we pay a portion of all of the cleaners and maintenance people based on an agreement of our share of the buildings and our number of vehicles in the buildings and how much we actually use for labor to repair our buses and things like that. We also share the mobility manager position. We share the reservationists based on ridership data for paratransit, and work cooperatively in other areas as well. So the increases that you see on the Fargo side, many of those will be passed through to Moorhead. The difficult part is that Fargo hasn't, it still has to decide on position evaluations and whether or not they're going to take in the dispatchers, and that has to be negotiated yet with First Transit. So there are some steps yet to know what that amount would be for Moorhead and to bring that to the budget. Our state grant application is due July 15th. And the state has made one more change that is very positive for Moorhead, is that they will make those grant awards by August 15th. And so those grant awards will be decided before we finalize the budget in Moorhead, which will be the first time since I've been in transit that has occurred. So that's going to be a good improvement, I think, for us to be able to know what that's going to be and be able to accommodate that in the budget process. So the First Transit contract, we have our own contract, Moorhead does, with First Transit. And so we bid that together as one service, but we have individual contracts with First Transit. So that'll have to be negotiated with them, with that option year and with that, what they do with the dispatchers and how do they, have enough drivers for filling in those gaps as far as service levels. Also the management fees and how many management people they need if they don't have the dispatchers, because they do some management features to the system as well. So those all need to be negotiated with First Transit. And so I'm not going to give you any numbers for this budget because I don't have it done yet, because there's a lot of moving parts still. And so basically the recommendation is to negotiate with First Transit for that one-year contract extension into 2020, and also then to move forward with operating budgets and grant applications. We might, so my grant is due at the 15th of July, and our next MAT board meeting is July 17th, so it's going to be difficult to get your permissions to move forward with the budget with that kind of timeline. So I don't know, we may want to change the July meeting and move it to a different time, or just use it as a report back to you as to what we've presented to the city manager. So there's a lot of moving parts. I mean, that's the main thing here. We do have some planning requirements in 2020 we'll start again on the 5-year transit development plan. So we will be hiring a consultant through the Metropolitan Council of Governments and doing our 5-year plan update, because our plan is up at the end of 2020, and 2021 starts the new 5-year plan. So there will be a local share match to that comes every 5 years, and that's for Moorhead's share is $13,333. So, and Fargo's share is $26,667. So that will be an added expense for 2020 planning. And otherwise, most of the changes have to do with the reorganization proposals and Fargo's budget changes. And we sit down together and work on those budget changes. We meet as a team to look at, what did we spend last year, and, what do we expect this year. So I am participating in those meetings, so that that's part of what we're doing with that. So any questions for me?
Questions for Lori? Well, Lori, the contract with First Transit, you said expires 12/31, so you're looking for a 1-year extension. So then next year, if we were to do the extension, at what point would we start looking at RFPs and going through the bidding process for that next contract?
March is usually when we start that process. We need to pretty much have everything decided months in advance, so that if there is a different contractor or change, that they can do all they need to do to hire. And
So start in March and be done sometime prior to the, obviously, expiration.
yeah, probably in September or October, we'd have to be done and have a contract in place.
Any other questions for Lori? If not, Lori, you have a recommended motion to continue your development of your budget on the end of your memo. We'd entertain a motion at this time.
2 recommendations.
Just 2 recommendations.
Yep. I move to support both recommendations, to direct staff to continue negotiations with First Transit and to move forward with the operating budget and grant applications for 2021.
You have a first?
Second.
We have a first and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you, Lori. Next, we'll go on to our agenda item number 3, which is our informational items. First item is 3A, the draft of the 2019-20 Moorhead U-Pass fees. Lori.
I think I still have one item.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Route changes.
Route changes. I'm sorry, Lori.
That's okay. It's the Lori show. I'm sorry I'm talking so much and I talk fast. Sorry about that. Route 4, which is the route that covers North Moorhead and the Highway 10 East Corridor and downtown. It's sort of our shopping route. Is it's our second most popular route, and has Right now, we have like 3 detours for construction on that route. But the major detour is for the 20th, 21st Street grade separation project on Main Avenue. Because that traffic is being rerouted to 34th Street, and because there's a lot of traffic then taking that left-hand turn onto Highway 10, the engineers have striped an area to try to steer people into the left turn lanes and make it work better for traffic. As part of that, we have detoured our bus Route 4 away from the Target shelter. And we have been told that this will continue, that we will not be able to make a left-hand turn onto 34th Street after this project is completed. We were having difficulty making that left-hand turn during high peak times anyway, and so I think it is appropriate for us to change Route 4 to permanently not serve the Route 4, the Target shelter and the Boulder Tap House bus stop. Those 2 bus stops are still going to be served by Routes 3 and Route 9. And so they do still have service because those buses are taking right-hand turns onto 34th Street instead of left-hand turns and can make that turn without any difficulty. So we normally publish our bus schedules in the summer so that they're out for the college students when they come to campus. And so we're thinking that it would be best to make this change now. It's a minor change. Under our route change policy, if the mileage is less than 25% and it's not affecting a nursing home or some one of our listed places where people with disabilities live, and it is not, we can just do this through city council resolution, and we do not need to have a public hearing. And so my recommendation is to recommend to the Morehead City Council approval of the Route 4 changes effective August 1st, 2018.
Questions for Lori?
Laura,
Go ahead.
Laura, I think this makes a lot of sense. That left turn is terrible under regular conditions, and I would imagine with all the added traffic because of the construction, it's really, it just doesn't seem safe at all. And in terms of the added distance, so, because I'm thinking most likely you'll see people that are shopping at Target and now they have to walk down to the bus, to the stop by McDonald's. And otherwise they would have to walk to the east over by Boulder, right? And so the distance is, it's not very much further. I wondered if you had a sense of just, it just means you're going to go to the other side of the parking lot at the end of Target, right?
Right, and I have not received any complaints about that. I've had some inquiries about where the bus stop would be, and when I told them, they were fine with that. So I haven't heard any negative feedback on it.
Okay, great, thanks.
Other questions? If not, Lori, you have a recommended motion on the bottom of your memo.
I'll make a motion.
We have a first.
Second.
First and a second. Any other discussion?
I just have a quick question. I see it says 2018. Is that because you made that change last year due to construction?
Yes.
Just checking. Thanks.
Oh, that was just me making a mistake.
Oh,
No.
okay.
19. I'm still doing reports for 18 and writing budgets for 20, and I forget what year I'm in. So thanks for catching that.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, motion's carried. Okay, service expansion request, Matthew?
Thank you. I apologize, I did not actually bring the PowerPoint presentation today, I forgot it. A few months ago, we were approached by United Way, and they have a workforce initiative where they would like to see service out in the industrial park, the Fargo Industrial Park, up on 12th Avenue North, out by 12th Avenue North, 45th. Currently, there's quite a few businesses up there, a lot of different factory type jobs that are up there, what they would consider to be living wages. And our passengers can't get there because we don't have service. So they had approached us. They had talked with a lot of the different companies out there, Marvin Windows, John Deere, a few other ones. They put together a meeting out at Microsoft here, I believe it was last month, and wanted to talk about, businesses that would have support for service out there and different things like that. And quite a few businesses did support the service. The The tap ride option that you see is one of two options that we presented to them. The first option was an expansion of our fixed route service of Route 17. That would take a little bit more work to have done. However, ultimately, that would be the service that we would want to provide up there. The tap ride option would only be for the first 12 to 24 months. Our hope is that we would break that service. So this is going to go in front of the City Commission pending your guys' approval today on Monday, the 22nd. United Way plans to be there to kind of talk about the support and different things like that, and the reasons that they feel that this service is so important. And Julie and I will be there only to discuss costs. Industrial Park is considered an unmet need in our TDP, our Transit Development Plan. The 2019 cost breakdown to start this service with TapRide that has software costs, startup costs in it, and then the cost for the contractor if we were to start the service around August 4th. The service would be a TapRide similar, or a TapRide service where people would be able to request a pickup out at West Acres or at Whale of a Wash on Route 17. So there would be 2 points of entry to our current fixed route system. The service would also run the same hours of operations as our current system. So 2019 would be about $146,000, and 2020 for the full year would be about $164,000. United Way was looking for support for different companies and organizations to donate to that cause to help get it off the ground. I do not have all that information with me. They will be bringing that on Monday. We just want to bring this before you guys, let you know about it, get your recommendation to throw this on the City Commission, and kind of let them make the determination. Questions?
Was there any, in the study, was there as far as the need, how many people are working out there as far as the workforce and size? You know, this is all cost, there's no revenue potentially from new riders, I'm assuming, in
Correct.
analysis?
In the TDP, they estimated something like 36 boardings a day, which is pretty low. United Way feels that having the service out there would allow more people to obtain higher paying jobs out there, and then that number would be substantially greater. It's all speculation. You know, we don't have any hardcore facts or details. It is like I said, it is an unmet need. There is no reason for us not to provide service out there other than just the cost. So, does that answer your question? I know it's
Yeah, I was just kind of wondering if
answer.
we had a sense of the demand. I know that there's obviously, there's a need, but just have we been out there, have we talked to any of the employers and just said, hey, what kind of, you know, meetings with employees, what kind of numbers are we looking at?
Yes, at Microsoft, United Way put together, there was about 30 employers that showed up who feel that providing transit out there would help them with their employee shortages. They talked to HR professionals out there, general managers. You know, there's the Sanford Occupational Health on 12th Avenue that we currently don't service. A lot of different employers in town send their people there for drug testing for those types of jobs. And so there was quite a bit of support out there, but again, I don't have any real numbers for you because there's really no way for us to get those numbers without providing the service up there. And anytime we add new service, we ought to always request 2 years to allow the rider base to grow.
Other questions?
Question. So I know that a lot of those things in the industrial parks run 24 hours. Have they talked at all about that, if it's the overnight shifts that actually need the transportation?
Yes, they did talk about the shifts that they have. They have the 3 shifts up there. The 6 o'clock in the morning trip would meet that need, and then you'd have your 3 o'clock in the afternoon and your 11 o'clock at night. They have talked about possibly starting the service sooner. We could start our service before 6:15 in the morning if we wanted to. Again, that would be a budget adjustment, increasing service. I do want to make it clear, though, that any money that they find to donate to this startup, the city would be on the hook for continuing the service once that money were to dry up. So, and I believe Commissioner Strand, they've talked to you a little bit about this, so not a huge surprise here.
I have a second question then. Is there been any conversation about whether or not they would be willing to support for a couple of years, if 2 years is your general kind of first, when you're starting a route, that they would kick in for the operating cost in that first 2 years beyond the startup cost?
Yes, and the answer is no.
Okay.
Yep, this is to get the service off the ground, to kind of prove that that need is there, do it in the most cost-effective manner, and then, you know, it's really a city service.
Sure. Thanks.
And Matt, if I can just fill in a little bit about what we looked at in the TDP, our consultant actually did contact businesses that were located out in the industrial park because we had heard from residents, from citizens and from riders that possibly there is an unmet need in the industrial park. However, at that time, the businesses replied that they were unwilling to support transit service out in the industrial park. And even when we brought forward concepts such as a coordinated rideshare program or shuttle service or things like that, they were still unwilling to support with their money such service. And I do believe we've documented too that MapBus historically, I think like 15 years ago, did provide transit service in the industrial park, and it was patently unsuccessful in the ridership fit numbers, and so it was discontinued. So we are in a different era, a different economy, and so it's just interesting that this need is coming forward at that time.
Yeah, I agree. And like I said, as far as Julie and I are concerned, we're really just here to operate the service and the cost. This is an initiative by United Way. With the conversation that they've had with the current people, the current businesses that are there, and their management staff and employees in the area. So.
I was wondering, so if they were to use the tap ride service, they'd have to go from West Acres or from Whale of a Wash. And so going back to Commissioner Wood's question about doing this, if they need the 24-hour service, if they, say somebody was coming from Moorhead and wanted to use it, but they would still have to be able to get to one of those two locations. And so if it's an off hours time, they wouldn't be able to use it because there is no other transportation to get them to where they need to be able to pick up the tap ride, right?
That is correct. Yes.
Is there a way of addressing that? And secondly, have you discussed with them whether there's a need for those Sunday hours too?
Yes, Sunday was brought up, and bottom line is if we provide any fixed route service, whether we were to choose, let's say we took this route and operated 24/7, 365 days a year, we would have to also provide MAT paratransit service as well. So there would be a pretty large cost justification there, or increase there. They would like to see it on Sunday, but that would only come with the rest of the system coming in for Sunday service. And then, yes, to answer your question, if they're coming in on off hours, they would still have to get to one of those two locations in order to pick up the bus. It would just be an extension of our fixed route service.
Other questions?
I just want to we just related that to, I'm just trying to think, so would there be even to add, I actually don't know the location for Whale of a Watch.
Sure. Yep.
So I know where West Acres is, but would there be even just one other location, like a downtown location? Because otherwise it means that the only people that could do it would be people that are within walking distance to those two locations. So if there was one.
Okay, so Whale of a Wash is actually on our Route 17, and West Acres is. So they would use the bus system to get to those locations, and they would transfer onto that vehicle.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, but as I'm saying is, if it was off hours, then the only people that could use it would be ones that were within walking distance to those two locations, so they could pick up the tap ride, right?
Yes.
So
we are not recommending off hours.
Okay.
No, because if we were to do off hours, we would also have that paratransit requirement there.
Okay, I see.
Yes. So what we're saying is our current operating hours are 6:15 to 11:15 Monday through Friday, and then Saturday from 7:15 to 11:15 p.m. Okay. And that's the only time that this service would operate. So they would have to use the regular fixed route to get to one of those two locations.
When it wasn't successful before, did we talk to the employees and employers about some of the reasons? Because could it have been that we just weren't able to provide it at the times that it was most needed? As I was thinking of those, night shifts, Sundays, things like, like that.
Sure. I was not here. Julie, I don't know if you were here. I do know that is part of the issue. Up until about 5 years ago, we only operated until about 10:15. So now we do go to 11:15 p.m. Again, like Michael said, 10, 15 years, a lot's changed in the Fargo-Moorhead area. But yeah, Julie, do you have?
When we did have service out there to the industrial park, part of it was the shift work that was impossible to make those connections. But when you visualize the industrial park and covering that with a fixed route, how do you do that effectively? And that route, we went on 12th Avenue, we went up 45th, we made a turnaround, came back out to 45th, and that was prior to Marvin Windows being out there. And then we took 45th straight out to West Acres to try and get a trip out there. So then that connection could be made with other buses, other routes in the system. And it was just very low ridership. And the main thing employers told us is, yes, we need this service. So we did bring the service. We worked with the employers. We tried, this is pre-Uber and Lyft, we tried to do a van rideshare program that didn't lift off. It was just a bit of a struggle. The employers are telling us that employees are finding a way to get there. Once they start there, usually they develop friendship or something that they are able to catch a ride. And they weren't willing to donate or provide any funding for the upkeep of the service. So we discontinued it out there. We put it where another need was. But again, that could have changed by now. Seems like it has.
I'll just, one last thing about that then, is this would be something where before we move ahead, I think, I like the idea of providing service out there, but I don't want to sort of just go back to something that wasn't successful before. But I think, and I agree, I don't think fixed route option is feasible and a good use of resources, but if there are ways, to use something sort of similar to the tap ride system, that it's more of a needs-based and, not buses running around empty, then if we were to do something like that is different from what we've done before, in order to serve those areas and increase the employment opportunities, I think that would be great.
And that's how this would work. The spots we take them to would connect with main system routes. So getting to that location, West Acres, we have several routes going there. Whale of Awash, we have Route 17 that goes there, but it's still a connection to the main system. So that's the goal, and it's in an area that is underserved in the Madison neighborhood area, so.
Mr. Chairman, are you looking for a motion on this, or are you looking for a motion?
Yes, we just wanted a motion to bring this forward at Monday's meeting.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, we have a first.
Second.
We have a first and second. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I think it's terrific that I know times are changing, but, in my mind, jobs are pretty important, and living wages are pretty important. And if we can help facilitate folks getting to those jobs and help fill some of those empty jobs, that's a way higher priority than meeting getting somebody out to shop. So the metrics of how we measure these successes, I hope we have an open mind about the value of what we're providing here, and not just get hung up on the numbers and look at it as a success or failure relative to how many people comparatively go to West Acres.
Right. Yeah, it's a different type of service, and it's a need. Just how much of a need we really don't know until we get the service out there.
And the last thing I'll throw in this came to us from the community.
Yes.
I mean, so you all know these needs are out there, but it's not like we're drumming it up internally. This is a response to a community request from community leaders. And I'm respecting that the United Way is vested in this, and I hope we have a partnership that continues that as long as we can into the future.
Any other discussion? Okay, if not, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, now we'll move on to agenda item number 3, informational items. First item is 3A, more UPasses. Lori?
Thank you. Our memo of understanding with the colleges was a 5-year memo of understanding, and it has expired. We've continued to move forward with the colleges using the same information in the memo of understanding at each year. And so what we do is we look at the completed year of 2018 and at farebox revenue that we have drawn in, we take that times 30%, and then we assume that to be our UPass fee, and then distribute it amongst the UPass colleges in Moorhead based on enrollment. And so we put this together in February, and so that the colleges can meet with their students and move forward with this. But we actually have not completed sitting down with all of the colleges to work out the UPass agreement. So this is only information at this time because we still need to meet with all of the colleges. We did talk with MSUM, but Concordia and M-State we still have to have conversations with. So the thing is that it's a big increase because all the new services we put on the street have ended up with higher ridership and higher revenues. And so 30% of more is more. And so the fee is that we recommend here under our MOU is 10.91% increase, which is a big leap. And normally our increases are anywhere from 2 to 5%. So 10%, almost 11% in 1 year is a big leap. But as we get into negotiations, I thought it was important to note that the state of Minnesota lowered our local share match for grants. And what the UPass fee was based on was that we needed money to match our grants so that we can keep the routes running through campus. And so because they lowered it in 19, which is half of the fiscal year 1920, I believe there's some room there for negotiation on that fee. And so, again, I have a meeting with the city manager next week on Tuesday, and this is one of the proposals on that list, is can we alleviate some of this increase, maybe even maintain the same level of UPass revenue as we did in the previous fiscal year or academic year, so that we're not doing an overly burdensome increase to the colleges in 1 year. So I'm not making a recommendation at this time. I just wanted you to know that this is where we're at, and it'll come back to you in July because we normally get our UPass agreements normally take place in August, and so we usually bring that to council in the first meeting in August. So when we meet as a board in July, we should have some negotiations done and discussions done. But I wanted to make sure you knew that this was in the works. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Lori, assuming you reach out to the schools to kind of show them where you're at and start that negotiating process?
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, we'll move on. 3B, the Ground Transportation Center renovation update. Julie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you are all aware, the Ground Transportation Center is being renovated, and frankly, it's about time. What we ran into right before we were going to bid the project out, we discovered that there is deeper, further, more urgent issues going on with the separation of the underground parking with the deck above it and actually a support beam. And in the time that the engineers had come in and looked at it to the time we went to our next meeting, they discovered that one of the tension bands had snapped. That's embedded within the concrete, and they were concerned that some of the anchors may have given way. Were there other tension bands that were in danger of giving way? So it was determined that we would do excavation in areas around the perimeter, and then pretty much smack dab in the middle of the slab to see if there was further damage. What they did discover was a pleasant surprise, that the damage did not go further than they initially thought. And actually in 2016, they had, KLJ was on board to do a facility study. They recommended fixing it at that time. Time rolls on rather quickly. At this point now, we do have to fix it. And what they have recommended, now there's a team that it's KLJ, Kimley Horn, who is out of Minneapolis, and a structural engineering firm. And then we have Foss Architects here in town as well. So they brought in the person from Kimley Horn while the excavation was going on, so he could get all of his data pulled together and he could get a good close look at what was going on with the deck. And so what was determined is that we would go right back to what they recommended in 2016, which is trenching around the foundation of the facility and putting a rubber membrane up against the wall to prevent underground water from seeping in and any surface water from seeping down, so that it would remain on the outside of the wall, not come in through the inside and cause more damage. So in addition to that, they would also add another layer of drain tile at about 5 feet down. So that would take care of all the issues that we were having and future issues that they anticipate, and take care of, they're not worrying about the genie joint anymore. If they do that, they weren't worried about any of the anchors or the tension bands or any of that type of stuff. So we did, there's an official report coming out. It should be out any day that will be provided. You're certainly welcome to a copy. I'm going to admit I don't understand a lot of what they're talking about, but I've got the basics. So we were lucky enough to be able to tag on to the end of an engineering contract. We got the excavation done much quicker than we thought. So now we're ready to move forward with the construction. And their KLJ will be bidding that out. It'll probably be early June, so we're hoping by early July we'll be starting to do the construction. And the GTC it's really separated. You have above grade, which is transit, and you have below grade, which is parking. So parking is going to take care of certain pieces of it, and then transit will take care of the stuff above grade. And the grants that are in place, we would have, it's about a $3.3 million renovation. So it would include Jefferson redoing some of that area that they now occupy in the lobby. They got a grant themselves to do that. So we're moving forward, and we're not going to be too far behind what was our initial schedule. So that was good news. You won't see a bus perpendicular in the parking structure. So I was relieved to hear that. So, but happy to answer any questions if you have any on that.
Questions for Julie on the... Julie, you mentioned, I think it's been talked about times about safety in that area, and will the redesign of this building, safety issues being incorporated into that design?
There will, yes. We're having different safety mitigation projects put in. One of them is line of sight that we have often struggled with. So as buses are entering from NP, coming in that driveway, our dispatchers are actually struggling with being able to see out that area. So they rely on cameras a lot. We have a lot of cameras at the facility. However, this project will relocate dispatch to the very southeast corner, and they'll be able to have a full view of what's going on. And Jefferson will be located up there by NP, but we're requiring that it remain glass to a certain extent so we can see through without any issues. We're taking out a lot of the line of sight where passengers may be coming or going, and you're coming upon a dark area or kind of a nook or cranny or any of that. We're going to be eliminating all of that and putting up much better lighting. That's one of the main things that we're going to be doing. And then we are also putting in a railing structure so that when people are coming out of the underground parking, and frankly, I'm not sure where or how this ever came to be, but they, instead of coming to the front door to exit out the lobby, they will exit out the door that literally walks right into the lane of buses. So we're going to put structures up where they will have to flow to the crosslight and not be able to go in front of the buses anymore. The drivers are quite pleased about that because they come around a blind corner. So that's one of the big things too. And we are going to also be adding more cameras to our facility, so.
John, you have a question?
Julie, I'm just curious, when you talk about security enhancement there, and then in the bigger picture, I'm just curious, with law enforcement moving to a new center away from the downtown, some folks have suggested we have a little precinct or a little drop-in office somewhere. Is that an option, or have we talked about that?
Yes and yes. Yes, when I met with PD, it's been probably about a month ago, when I offered that we would certainly be able to host one of them having an office at our facility, and they were very much on board with that because they have their downtown resource officers, and I'm not certain where they're going to house those folks, but if we had dedicated transit police, then we would have an office for them so they could, even just the presence of them, knowing they're there, makes a lot of difference.
I think that would be a really great partnership.
Thank you.
We could
Yep.
step that up and enhance that and nail that down.
Yeah.
I know there's visions for downtown further down the road, but moment present, this could get us on that path and kill a few birds with one stone.
Yeah, we're excited about that, yeah.
Any other questions for Jim? Okay, if not, we'll move on to item number 3C, the first transit update discussion. Julie, Matthew, and Lori.
It's coming up for. We do have Julie Sellner here. Julie was at our last MAP board meeting as well and spoke just a bit. We thought what we would do is go ahead and let Julie have a chance to speak. And in fairness, Julie has a little bit of a hearing issue, so please, I will help speak up if we need to. So it's
They're
fine.
very patient with my hard of hearing. I come across a little bit loud because I am hard of hearing, so I apologize for that. First of all, just really want to thank you for the opportunity to take a couple of minutes to let you know where we've come, what we've been challenged with, and where we're going to. The last time that I was here, I kind of had stepped up for an unexpected departure of a general manager. During that time of digging in the first couple of days, we realized that we were far more understaffed than anticipated or being reported to our regional team. Part of that is the management team was just giving us head counts and not full-time equivalent personnel, which is a significant difference, as I'm sure many of you would be aware of. So that was a challenge to overcome. At that time, we also started a national search for a general manager. We had our corporate recruiting team fully engaged in that process. We have identified a new general manager. He will be starting June 1st. His name is Joseph Rivera. He comes from Stamford, Connecticut. He is currently the Stamford's division manager at one of the largest multi-divisional public transit systems in Connecticut. He currently oversees 65 vehicles, 124 employees in both a union-based environment. So it's a system that's very similar to what we're working with here. Prior to that, Joseph was the general manager for First Transit in Greenfield, Massachusetts, where he oversaw both fixed route and paratransit, very similar to this system, for a 40-city county in Franklin, Massachusetts, I believe it is. I'm going to be assisting Joseph during his onboarding as well as our staff in getting him familiar with our service. I think his experience being very similar to Matt and I, that will give him the strength that he needs to be able to walk in and make a smooth transition. I think that because of our regional team, myself included in that, having our eyes opened as to our misconceptions as to how things were being handled will keep me far more fully involved than we had been in the past. So we expect that to be a very successful transition. We've had some challenges along the way just since I've been here. I do need to announce that we had an untimely departure of our operations manager as well on April 8th. We currently have an intern ops manager, Lisa Hoos, who has been with the company for several years. She has done a fantastic job filling that in and has been very helpful in making significant progress. And I believe that our leadership team agrees with that. As soon as Joseph comes on board, June 1st, we'll open up that position for the application process and review. I think it's very vital that he's a part of that process because they're going to be partners in running that location and managing that system. So for me to choose who his partner is going to be, I feel far more confident if he was involved in actually leading that process. One of the greatest difficulties we've challenged, and we kind of mentioned that about the driver shortage, and that's a couple of things. Not only the FTE not being reported correctly, full-time equivalent being reported correctly, but our unemployment in this area is just astronomically low. Wow, I mean, from October to December in Fargo and Moorhead was 1.9% unemployment. I don't know if we've ever seen that low of employment in this area before. I know it is an 18-year low. You are the sixth lowest unemployment in the state of North Dakota, the ninth lowest in the state of Minnesota, and nationwide, we're at a 3.9% unemployment. So if you're sitting at a 1.9, unfortunately, and please don't take this as an insult, those are people that either don't want to work or are choosing not to work, and it's not a large pool to choose from. Recruitment efforts are strongly engaged. Our corporate team is in that. We've had open recruitment days at the garage where we had the vehicle up for display. Since I have come on, we have employed 19 full-time drivers into revenue service and 1 part-time driver. Unfortunately, this is a job seekers market, and we have lost 8 of those people, not of that particular group, but a couple of pre-existing employees as well. 4 of them to higher paying positions, and 4 of them have moved out of state. So those are always our challenges in an industry of driving. Driving is in high demand right now. Another challenge is our media challenges, and unfortunately that's kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly. One of the first articles that came out, and shortly after my arrival, is that our drivers were being attacked by passengers. Now, obviously, our safety for our drivers is as important to us as the safety of our passengers. We've done several things to make steps and provide the tools that our drivers need to hopefully de-escalate situations. And I'm going to kind of cover that here in just a moment in the training that we've been providing. The next article that came out was The Longest Loop. And The Longest Loop was really a very positive look at how public transit is a necessity and a blessing to the community. It was a wonderful article, and I think a very factually based article. The third one that came out was Map Bus Drivers Breaking the Law and Dangerous Drivers. And I lose my words here because my passion comes out. We are not unsafe drivers. They had, 2 years of videos to review in order to find unsafe driving habits. And in those couple of years of hundreds and thousands of videos, they found 3 examples. One of those examples, the reporter states that we almost hit the front door of this house, where in fact, if you watch it, it's extremely icy and snowing conditions. The bus is in a little bit of a slide. He is going slow. All of us has experienced this in this weather up here. And he goes into the snowbank. Not hard. We're not throwing snow all over the place. We're not plowing through it. He bumps up into the bank of the snow. So obviously that's overstated. There were 2 other incidents that do give us great concern, and in all honesty, both of those drivers were removed from service. However, that wasn't included in the report. And this last one has been about the First Transit's lawsuit. This lawsuit is a driver from the East Coast who claims that we did not pay him properly. He filed the lawsuit as a collective action. As a collective action, the courts have to respond by making notice of a class action. We at that time provided them all of our paratransit drivers across the nation that are in our employment. Nothing has gone to court, nothing has been decided. We at First Transit believe we're paying our drivers properly. I believe the leadership team knows that here in Fargo, we are paying our drivers for all the time that they work. The reporter of this particular story spent a lot of time and made over 100 calls to previous employers and employees, many of them while they were working, while I was sitting next to them in some cases. And they only found one person that would come forward in the city of Fargo. Now, unfortunately, I don't think there's any employer in this country that doesn't have at least one disgruntled employee. I don't think they're going to find anything factually based. And because First Transit believes we are paying them properly, we are defending that case, and we will continue to do so. So let's get past all that, and let's see what we have actually accomplished. I had spoken to you about our recruitment and how we've actually put 20 drivers into revenue service in a very short 60-day period. My goal when I first came on was first service excellence, improving our transparent communication with the leadership team, and supporting and developing our local team. I think our communication is very transparent, very open, sometimes maybe a little too honest, but it's definitely improved. Our training efforts, let me just kind of recap that a little bit. Roy Smith, he is our district specialist in safety and training. He came into Fargo. We have completed wheelchair securement for every driver and every staff member that drives for our service. That's a one-on-one training and reevaluation. We have also completed wheelchair lift retraining for all of our paratransit drivers as well as the paratransit dispatch team. George Booker is our district trainer for our Transit Ambassador program, and these are a lot of the tools that we're going to be providing to our drivers to de-escalate situations, to help keep them safe, as well as each safety meeting that we have had has been concentrating on customer service and providing the tools that drivers need in order to bring things down. Unfortunately, some of these cases, we are not applying those tools that would help to calm these situations down. George Booker is, this Transit Ambassador program is a mandatory training. Every employee is scheduled for that, and we start that process Monday morning. We have 3 classes a day, 4 hours each for 5 days in a row, and hope to achieve at least 99%, I'm hoping for 100, but 99% of our training to be completed. Training our trainers. We're coming due for certification. We have Roy Smith, our district safety gentleman, coming back into town to train the people that are currently on staff. We've also identified several other individuals that we'd like to add to that program, and that therefore widening our base of trainers that are available to get new hires into service without putting stress on the service that we're providing. Andrew Ulmer, who is well known to everybody, is a long-term employee with very good skill sets. He's been put in charge of reviewing each of our dispatcher skills sets and providing one-on-one training with them. That started about a week and a half ago and is more engaged now that summer service has come into play. And as far as our management and supervisor training team, I'm the one that's working with them. And a lot of what we're working on are procedural requirements, reporting requirements, policy knowledge and enforcement. I think we have had some weakness in those areas, and I think we're seeing a lot of strength in those areas now. Priority setting, logic-based approach to operational management, and achieving operational goals. We are First Transit, myself personally, very committed to making this service run as excellent as we possibly can. And I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. Thank you. And I hope it wasn't too loud. Thank you. Do you need me for anything else? Any questions at all?
Questions?
I was just wondering, to address the driver shortage again, I know, and as I said, I know you've made a lot of progress in that area. What has been done to just assess whether or not we are remaining competitive? Have we been looking at, you know, the wage and benefits that we provide and making sure that we are increasing those to make sure that we be able to hire and retain drivers? Are we doing environmental scanning? What kind of things have we been doing to make
Oh,
sure
there
that
is so much to that subject. You've touched the tip of that iceberg. Last year, we put in a 5.5% increase in our driver wages from what our contract rate base already was. And right now, our starting wage is at $15.10. We have already proposed to the leadership team that we need to raise that to a minimum of $16 per hour. That's not just going to affect our new hires, that's going to affect the first 3 years of our driver's base, because all of those are under $16 an hour. And even at that, it will not make us competitive. Right now, for a CDL driver in this area, the starting wage is between $15 and $21 an hour. So when we look at wages only increasing 2 to 5%, that's just simply not realistic with the unemployment rates we're looking at and the competitive market that we're facing as employers. I think it's more realistic to look at a double-digit type of wage increase in order to be competitive. One thing that we are doing now that wasn't really in practice when I first arrived here is we're being far more selective of the individuals we're choosing. However, finding valid candidates, viable candidates, is very difficult to do. We have Indeed being included, Craigslist, careers.com. It is on the website with the city of Moorhead and Matt Buss. And yet we are still very fortunate to get at least 2 to 3 viable candidates in class each week. Now, that brings up a whole nother subject, which is how many of those actually make it into revenue service? And in most industries, when you're starting at a wage where you're providing the training and no previous experience is required, you're lucky to get about 50 to 60% of those into revenue service or into where they are employed and providing the employer back what they've already invested in their training. CDL training requires just a little bit more of that, and of course that's a little bit more stringent training, meaning if they're just not getting it in class or behind the wheel, we're stopping that and we're removing them because we only want safe drivers. So that puts our percentage at about 40 that are actually making it into revenue service. Now, how do we retain them? And unfortunately, in this market, it really is wages, and we continue to have this discussion because the wages that it will take are almost shocking to us all, but I don't think there's an industry anywhere in this area that isn't facing that same challenge. Did I go too far into depth?
No.
You got my passion going there.
Well, the one thing that I will say related to that is that, you know, we could also factor in the savings that we would have if we retain people. So if we increase the salaries.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I apologize.
We could also factor in the savings that we'll acquire from if we increase the salaries or the wages to a more competitive level. We'll retain people, and it seems as though part of it is, you know, you bring people in and you dedicate all the time into training them, and then if they lose because we aren't sufficiently competitive, now we have to start back and retrain somebody new. So just bringing people in and being able to keep them by paying them a more competitive wage would be beneficial. We will, you know, reap some of the benefits and savings just because of that.
That's very true, and a lot of that burden is on just First Transit because we're seeing it in higher overtime with the complete turnover. So our staff, road supervisors, managers' tendency to be en route to help cover that when we are short. The cost of training one driver who does not have a CDL is approximately $3,500 to $4,500 by the time they get from the first day of classroom into revenue service. For somebody with CDL, we're talking probably about $3,000. On top of that, we're also offering a hiring bonus of $2,500, and we provide a referral bonus to any employee that refers a new hire to us. There are tremendous costs in this right now, yes.
Any other questions? Okay, anything else, Julie?
Oh, I just wanted to thank Julie Selner. She has done a wonderful job. Spent a lot of hours doing it. We're seeing improvements in morale and service on the street. We're seeing improvements with on-time performance. So I think it has made a difference to to have Julie up here as a resource. So I just want to let everybody know that. Thank you. We're good. Thank you.
Okay, we will move on to item 3D, Mobility Matters Forum. Matthew, it's attachment in our agenda too.
This one's really easy and quick. So many of you, probably all of you, know Mike Williams, former city commissioner. He approached us about having a Mobility Matters Forum. This will be done next Wednesday, the 22nd, from 9 to 2. He has several speakers who have signed up to come in, talk about transportation, mobility, all those types of things. So we just want to throw that invite out there for anyone here, let you guys know about that, about it. Go on our website, sign up for it if you'd like. It is a morning event. There will be food trucks from 11 to 2. I like food trucks, so I'll be there. But other than that, it's just a place for, he's really excited about it, wanting people to come in, kind of talk about different or alternative transportation methods, whether it be transit, bike share, car share, EV cars, those types of things. So lots of different discussion points. So if any of you are interested, we just wanted you to be aware of it.
Thank you. Okay, item 3E is the update on the Transit Authority study. Michael?
All right, I'll also go through this very quickly. As you all know, MetroCog had programmed a study in coordination with MapBus to look at funding for when MetroCog becomes a transportation management area, or TMA. That designation happens when this region, the population of this region, goes north of 200,000 people. Current estimates put the population of this region at about 205,000, so we are fairly sure that during the next census we will get this TMA designation. How that affects MapBus is that some of its federal funding becomes restricted in its use. Currently, some of I won't go into the whole detail of the sources and the name of the programs, but currently the federal government, because we are under that 200,000 threshold, allows MapBus to flex their federal money for operations and capital. However, in the future, that operations will be limited based upon the number of buses that are in the fleet. It's called the Rule of 75. So there will likely be a need for local money to fill in for that loss of federal money. We are doing the study to look at different funding mechanisms and governance structures that MapBus could employ in order to fill that gap and in order to create more of a cohesive regional governance structure for the transit system, just like the implementation of this board a number of years ago. So this study just kicked off. We have a two-tier decision-making process. We have a technical advisory committee, which is comprised of local jurisdictional staff and MetroCog. And then we also have a policy advisory committee that is comprised of the decision makers and city leadership, so elected officials, city leadership. We have, I think we've only had one so far TAC. We're scheduling our policy advisory committee. The schedule of the project hopefully will be completed by the end of the year, and at the end of the year we will hopefully have in place a recommendation in how to address possible funding shortages and kind of have an implementation plan of what steps we need to do, whether it be legislative measures or different agreement structures or things like that in order to kind of solve some of the problems as we grow. I will say that too, it's an opportunity to study how we currently use our funds and how we could leverage other funding sources to kind of complete the goals as we've seen in the last the discussions today, there is just a lack of funding for some of our stated goals, whether it be making wages competitive or providing transit service to underserved areas in the community. And as our community grows, we know that transit service must grow along with it. So just a quick update. If you have any questions, I'll feel free to answer.
Questions for Michael?
Quick question. You mentioned that it's a two-group task force, one elected officials, one a technical group?
Correct.
Is Valley Senior Services part of the technical group?
I'm not sure. I think we consider Valley Senior Services a stakeholder. So we'll also have stakeholder, that's part of the public participation process and not necessarily the decision-making process, yeah.
Good. I know there's been a lot of discussion on this issue, and we certainly want to be a part of the discussion. I think, we're a significant part of the transit system, so I want to make sure that we're in the loop.
Yeah, we do have a significant public outreach component of the plan, and we have, like I mentioned, stakeholder groups that we will be meeting with throughout the plan to get information in. So
super. Thank you.
We will be reaching out to Valley Senior Services.
Good.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, next item is 3F, the operations report on college ridership updates. Matthew and Lori.
Okay. So you have March and April operations reports in front of you. And in March and in April, we had a lot of service cancellations due to weather. It was a bad winter for us, one of the worst ever since I've been in transit 37 years. So I don't think we've ever canceled service as many times as we did this last winter. In any case, it affected our revenue hours and it affected our ridership. So an important piece to look at, and when you're looking at the report is, with less service, we have less hours, and we're going to have less passengers because of that. And they correlate fairly well with each other. I can't get my report up the right way here. Here we go. Okay, so I did want to note in March that ridership was down in Moorhead, and probably a little bit more than the revenue hours. But again, on-time performance was a really difficult piece with this winter. So that's all I really can say about March. It was just a bad month. And in April, we did also have bad weather, and usually April isn't so bad, but we had some better ridership, I think, individual route-wise in April. For example, Route 6, which is the Dilworth route that we had changed and added more evening service, has increased 20.42%. So that is a good reflection on the increased evening service that we have. We moved it from Route 9 to Route 6, and yet both of those routes had some increased ridership. So there were some positives to go with those negatives on the Moorhead routes.
So same in Fargo. Obviously, weather-related issues for both March and April were the main factor. Our ridership is down in both months. March is just under 8%, and April is, I think, 10%, 11, 12%. So those do correlate with the revenue hours and the revenue mileage. Some of our outer line areas that we have in Fargo, we have some fairly long routes on there, so the mileage reduction is almost the same as our passenger reduction. Our passengers per hour stays pretty steady, so that's good. We don't feel that we're losing ridership, but the biggest impact to the ridership for the past 2 months is the fact that the weather caused us to cancel service, and so we had quite a few missed hours and missed trips. The other item is on-time performance. On-time performance is slowly getting better in Fargo. Moorhead is seeing some challenges there with the detours and construction pieces that you guys have. But overall, the on-time performance is increasing on just about every route, with the exception of Link. So we have to drill down into that one a little bit more. Link FM, I believe, was about 60% on time for the month of April. For March, We gotta do these in a different way this day.
I know they're really hard to read when you're trying to flip them.
But anyway, so with that, looking over paratransit, there was a little bit of an increase in paratransit ridership for both months, about 4% in March and just under 3% in April. It stays pretty steady, so the reservationists and our mobility manager is doing a good job there. Revenue hours were increased a little bit, again, with the weather. We have snow and ice conditions, and so those snow and ice conditions came off later this year, which would account for some of the increase in the revenue hours and mileage and ridership. Overall operating information for GTC and paratransit, our call volumes at GTC are really going down, which is good. What I'm hoping it means is that our customer-facing technology is doing its job and people have less questions. We haven't been able to verify that yet, but it looks like the phone calls are starting to decrease in queue times, so that's another indicator that our customer-facing technology is doing what it needs to do. With collisions, we are increased on collisions, on non-preventable collisions. I believe a lot of those are rear ends and just some different odd things that happen throughout the weather. Preventables are improving. We had 3 preventables in March.
And 1 in April.
1 in April, yeah. Let's see, and then missed trips, complaints, all that information is there. I won't go over all of it. It's kind of boring. But going down to the light blue section on the very bottom, we're still seeing the increase in people using the MapBus app, so that's always a really good sign for us. We've actually had to increase our bandwidth on the site twice in the last 3 months because so many people were using it, it exceeded our bandwidth limit, so it locked the app down, which isn't always great, but it's a good problem to have because people are using it, and that's what we want to see. So, Laura, anything else?
No. Any questions for us?
Quick question. I noticed the number of disabled riders is significantly different in Moorhead versus Fargo and elderly. Is it calculated differently? Is it tracked differently? I mean, almost 40% of the riders are disabled in Moorhead.
A lot of the social services in Moorhead purchase passes for clients and are very active in making sure that they have transportation and can get where they need to go. So I think they're very engaged in this. And many of our social service agencies in Moorhead have certified as travel trainers with us, and so they can take advantage of the free 10 ride card and take their clients out, show them how to use transit so that they can rely on that better. So I just think it's more of a social service involvement.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I don't think so.
Thank you.
Right, Matthew, you want to give an update on the new rider ID cards, which is attachment 3G?
Yeah, so these are the last 2 items I have. They'll go pretty quick. You guys should have a printout. We talked about fare media earlier today when we talked about fare boxes. Currently, we have all kinds of different fare media. We have tickets, we have smart cards, we have single ride tickets. People can use cash. Well, with our smart cards, they're the hard plastic-like, credit card-like cards. And we had one color for adult, one color for disabled. We had trying to keep inventory was kind of difficult. And so then we have our special user cards for people who qualify for paratransit on the paratransit service. And those were a cardboard or a card stock piece of paper, if you will. And so what we decided to do was just combine the two. We are now had our we call it MapPass, and that's the smart card device. And when someone comes in and purchases a pass or they're issued a special user card, they will be issued a rider ID card, which will actually hold their 30-day pass right on it. That does have their picture and their name on there and the expiration date for them, and if they're in paratransit, any conditions that qualify or that they qualify for, or restrictions, if you will. And then there is a little color swipe down here, and that color indicates to our admin office whether they are elderly, disabled, youth, or adult. That way, we're not printing that anywhere on the card anymore. It's just a color that we know internally. Doesn't matter if people know it, but it's a little less obvious than walking around with an orange smart card or a blue smart card or something like that. So we felt it was a little bit cleaner, a little bit easier. It's all one stock, and touch of a button, the dispatcher or the reservationist is able to print them out.
Any questions? Okay, 3H, Matt?
All right, and then the last one is we're always looking for new technology. We did have a technology grant that we needed to spend down. So we talked with our software company, RouteMatch, who does our AVL, AVA announcements on Fixed Route and does our scheduling on Matt Paratransit. They have an app called Amble, which allows passengers to book and cancel their ride from their phone or from a web browser, and also allows them to see where the vehicle is within 15 minutes of their scheduled pickup time to help prevent no-shows. They've had this app out there for some time. We were able to get it for a very reasonable price, and since we did sole source this because it was created by the same company, so just a lot less problems. We're hoping to have this up and running in the middle of July and pushing out to passengers by this fall. Our hope is that it will help reduce the number of phone calls and wait times for people who are booking paratransit rides. The other nice thing is service providers or nursing homes who book, they might call in and book a ride for 6 different people. They can now just go right on their computer and they can book a ride for all 6 of those people without having to call us. And then our reservationists will be able to go in there and verify and accept the ride, deny the ride, do whatever they need to do on our end. So it should be a lot more efficient scheduling and a lot more efficient use of their time. So I just printed out the brochure so you can see what it looks like. It's nothing super fancy, but we always like those types of upgrades whenever we can try and take some of the burden of administrative duties off of our dispatchers and let them focus more on the customer service and the drivers.
Questions for Matt? Okay, thanks for the update, Matt. Any other business? Okay, hearing none, we are officially adjourned. Thanks, everyone.